My DIL looked me dead in the eyes and said at the Christmas dinner, "We only invited you for the gifts." I said, "Then open the gift. Now." I walked into my son's house on Christmas evening with the same steady breath I once carried into trauma rooms. Jason and Brittany's home glowed brighter than every house on their polished California street, gold ornaments everywhere, as if money fell only in their yard. Inside, noise hit me instantly. Loud laughter, sharp glasses, guests posing for Instagram. All Brittany's people. None of mine. I wore the red sweater I knitted when Jason was 8 and held a small, silver-wrapped box. Brittany spotted me first, shimmering in her dress, smiling, wide, cold, not kind. "Susan, you made it," she said. The words sugar-coated but cold. Her perfume hit me a second too late, sharp and expensive. She turned and announced to her sister, "See, I told you she would not skip gift night. She never does." Her sister smirked. "Old house money always shows up." Jason glanced over, gave me a thin smile, then turned away before I reached him. He was laughing with Brittany's brother about something involving investment levels. I stood there for a moment, holding my box like an anchor. At the dinner table, the conversation revolved entirely around Brittany, her salon rebrand, her plans for fillers she wanted to try next year, the European trip she would book as soon as the money issue settled. The table looked beautiful, I cannot lie. Gold chargers, tall candles, plates so white they glowed. But beauty built on contempt feels like plastic in your mouth. I tried to ask a simple question in the middle of the chatter. Would it be all right if I sit near the children when they open their presents? My voice was steady, polite. Brittany set her wine glass down hard enough for the stem to tremble. She looked straight into my eyes, and this time she did not bother coating anything with sugar. "We only invited you for the gifts, honestly." The room fell silent. Then someone laughed short, sharp. "At least she's honest," one of Brittany's cousins said, as if honesty were cruelty's fancy twin. Brittany leaned back in her chair. "Do not get confused, Susan. You show up once a year, drop off something pricey for the kids, smile for a couple of pictures, then go back to that little nurse-smelling apartment of yours. We are not doing the Hallmark family act." Another voice, her sister again, chimed in like a dagger wrapped in tinsel. "Old people should be useful or invisible. Gifts make you useful." I felt my throat tighten, but I had learned long ago how to breathe through worse things than arrogance. "I came because I wanted to see my family," I said softly. "That is all." Brittany snorted. "If you did not bring anything, we would not be having this conversation. Let us be real." Around that moment, if you feel that justice deserves celebration, if you believe stories like this should echo far, far away, then go on and smash that hype button. Your support keeps voices like mine alive. Thank you for listening. Now let me tell you what happened next. Her words hung in the air like smoke from a cheap candle. People shifted in their seats. A couple of them lifted their phones, not trying to hide that they were hoping for a spectacle. Brittany's painted lips curled with something between triumph and boredom. I placed the silver-wrapped box on the table. Not abruptly, not with flair, just steady. I nudged it toward her with 2 fingers. "If that is the case," I said, my voice calm enough to make a few heads tilt, "then open the gift. Now." Brittany blinked, then smirked. "What, you are afraid we will not like it?" "No," I answered. "I want everyone to see exactly what you invited me for." Her sister gasped. Someone whispered, "Record this." A phone lifted. Another phone lifted to film. Brittany turned the box slowly, expecting it to sparkle for her audience. She slipped a nail under the tape, the paper tearing softly. Her smug smile never wavered until she lifted the lid. Her face cracked first. No jewelry, no cash, nothing Instagram-worthy. Only documents, truths she never imagined I'd dare bring into her perfect house. I sat perfectly still, my heartbeat calm, clarity settling into me like a long-delayed sunrise. This was the first fracture in the world she'd built around my silence. The gift wasn't what she wanted. It was the truth finally unwrapped. People think resentment comes from one big betrayal, but most of the time, it grows slowly from little misunderstandings that harden because no one softens them in time. Jason was not born cruel. He simply discovered how convenient it was to blame me instead of facing who truly abandoned him and who actually stayed. I spent my life in emergency rooms, trauma bays, night shifts, holidays no one else wanted. When Jason was small, I would come home smelling of antiseptic, kiss his forehead without waking him, and hide my blood-stained shoes so he wouldn't see. His father, Groves, was a gentle mechanic Jason adored until the accident took him instantly. Jason was 11 when I held him through sobs that shook his whole body. I whispered, "You still have me, but grief always wants a villain." I worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs, ER nights, senior home care, weekend clinic shifts. I slept in scraps of hours, packed lunches half-conscious, saved every spare dollar for Jason's future. He never knew how many meals I skipped so he could eat more. But his father's new wife lived beautifully, granite counters, soft lighting, a home that smelled of candles instead of disinfectant. I saw the shame in Jason's eyes grow like mold, even though all I ever did was stay. When his stepmother bought him expensive sneakers, he glowed. When I bought him the same brand but discounted, off-season he barely looked up. Eventually, he stopped thanking me for anything. He told classmates my job was temporary, as if emergency medicine could ever be temporary. He told them I was too tired to parent properly. One night he snapped, "Why can't you have a normal job like everyone else's mom?" I tried to understand. I tried to be patient, but resentment is a disease that spreads quietly. His rewrite of our history began in small ways. I missed his championship basketball game because I was stabilizing a teenager with a ruptured spleen. Jason told everyone, "Mom chose strangers over me." I locked the door one night when he tried to sneak out because 2 girls had been shot near the highway exit that week. In his version, I kept him prisoner like a warden. When he turned 16, I bought him a used but safe car. He told people, "Mom's broke because she's lazy." It stung, but I kept moving. That is what single mothers do. There was one night I will never forget. Jason got into a fight behind a liquor store. The police were called. I arrived at the station at 3 in the morning after a double shift. I signed paperwork with dried blood under my nails, took Jason home, and held him while he cried in frustration. Years later, he told Brittany, "My mom left me in a cell all night like she didn't care." I do not know how I became the villain in a story where I had nearly collapsed, trying to reach him, but some wounds I inflicted unintentionally. After that exhausting night, when he stormed around the kitchen the next day, I muttered without thinking, "You're acting just like your father." I meant stubborn, impulsive, he heard. "I regret you the way I regretted him." That careless sentence dug its way so deep into him that I think he never recovered from it. By the time he reached 19, the distance between us was no longer a crack, it was a canyon. He had big dreams then, dropping out of college, opening a bar with 2 friends who couldn't manage their own checking accounts, and asking me to co-sign a massive loan with predatory interest. When I read the numbers, I felt physically cold. One default and we would lose the roof over our heads. "I cannot sign this," I told him. Jason's eyes filled not with hurt but with rage. "You're sabotaging my future because you want me stuck under you forever." "That is not true," I said carefully. "I am protecting our home." "No," he shouted, voice sharp enough to split the air. "You're a selfish, bitter woman. A nurse who stinks of medicine, who works herself to death but stays poor because she's too stupid to want better. You're nothing, Mom. Nothing." I stood still. Not because I was calm, because if I moved, even an inch, I knew I would break. He grabbed his backpack, slammed out the door, and went to live with his father and stepmother for a long while. They embraced him, fed him stories of ambition and success, and let him shape the narrative however he wished. In that version, I was the obstacle he overcame. I was the small, embarrassing past he needed distance from. And from that point forward, in every story Jason told to friends, to coworkers, and eventually to Brittany, I was not the mother who raised him alone. I was the villain who kept him from greatness. Most people think the cruelty of children comes suddenly, like a slap. It rarely does. It arrives quietly, in the form of doubt they plant in you so they can take what they want without feeling like thieves. And the day I discovered my $75,000 was gone, that doubt wrapped around my throat like a hand. That money was never meant for spending. Years after my husband died, the lawsuit related to his accident finally settled, and with it came a small compensation, nothing life-changing, but enough to buy peace of mind. I also sold an old plot of land in Fresno that he and I once dreamed of fixing up. Together, the payment and the sale made a neat sum, $75,000. I placed it in a separate savings account for emergencies, hospital bills, a potential nursing home, or, if the good Lord called me sooner than expected, funeral expenses, so Jason wouldn't have to bear the cost. I barely touched it for years. It was my last safety net. 1 week before Christmas, I walked into the grocery store for eggs, onions, and ham. I swiped my card without thinking. The screen flashed red. Declined. I tried again. Declined. The young cashier leaned in gently, the way people speak to the elderly when they think we frighten easily. Maybe try another card? This is my main account, I said. She lowered her voice. It says your available balance is under $500. My heart thudded painfully. Something inside me, a nurse's instinct sharpened by decades of crisis, snapped to attention. I took my bags, went home, and opened my laptop. My hands trembled as I logged into my account. Line after line of transactions I did not recognize filled the page. A furniture store in Santa Monica. A salon supplier, 4 separate charges, each hundreds of dollars. A payment to a booking agency for a European trip scheduled for spring. A massive deposit for new location, Brittany Luxe Beauty. All withdrawals, all using my card. I called the bank immediately. The representative spoke carefully, as if handling fragile glass. Mrs. Groves, these purchases were chip and PIN verified. They had the correct PIN. That's impossible, I said. I never. She interrupted delicately. Is there any chance you may have forgotten lending your card to someone? It happens, especially when clients are older. The patronizing softness in her tone stung more than the missing money. I may be 72, but I have charted medical records and death certificates with more precision than most people half my age. Still, she pressed on. Sometimes seniors accidentally share their PIN or misplace their card without realizing it. You're not alone. It was the first time someone suggested gently that I might be slipping. And that was when the memories slid into place, one after another. Brittany saying, "Let me hold your purse, Susan. Your hands shake so much." Brittany chirping, "I'll enter the PIN for you. Your eyesight isn't great." Brittany taking my wallet to double-check something in another room. Brittany returning it with that glossy smile that never reached her eyes. I hung up the phone with a pit in my stomach. I called her that evening, my voice steady despite the panic clawing at my ribs. "Brittany, sweetheart, have you ever used my card by accident? Or—" She exploded instantly. "Are you accusing me of stealing, seriously? My God, Susan, you forget where your own keys are and now you're playing detective?" Jason appeared in the background. I could hear him sigh, the kind of sigh that drips with disappointment. "Mom, don't do this. You've been so forgetful lately. It's embarrassing." Embarrassing, a word that had followed me my whole life through Jason's adolescence, through Brittany's smirks, through every moment I spent trying not to take up too much space in their shiny California world. Brittany piled on. "Maybe you spent it and forgot. Old people do that. Honestly, Jason and I were just talking. Maybe you shouldn't be managing your own finances anymore." My vision blurred for a moment. A frightening wave of confusion rolled through me. Could I have forgotten something? Could I have misplaced receipts? Could I— No, 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 30 years of emergency medicine had trained me to question everything but not myself, not my memory, not when it mattered. I ended the call politely, pretending I accepted their explanation, but I sat down at my small kitchen table with my laptop, printed every statement, and began laying out page after page like evidence in a crime scene. And that is exactly what it was. I took a red pen, my old habit from chart review days, and circled every suspicious charge. I wrote dates, times, amounts in a notebook with neat, deliberate handwriting. I enabled SMS alerts for every future transaction. If they touched anything again, my phone would scream. As I worked, the truth sank into my bones. They had not only stolen my money, they had tried to steal my sanity as well, turning my age into a weapon against me, hoping that if I questioned myself, I would be too ashamed or confused to fight back. That was the real cruelty. By the time I finished marking every page, the fear in my chest had turned into something colder, sharper, clearer. They wanted to paint me as a confused old woman, but I had just built the kind of case any detective would envy. And the question pressed against my ribs like a bruise. If I told the police what happened, would they believe Brittany the polished, confident young woman with perfect lashes? Or would they believe the old widow whom her own son called forgetful? I stared at the stack of evidence in front of me and whispered to myself, they may not believe me yet, but they will. People believe elder abuse happens in shadows. In my case, it happened under Christmas lights, polished marble floors, and the scent of cinnamon candles. It happened slowly, step by step, until one day I realized the same hands that once called me Mom were now tightening a noose around my freedom. The missing money was only the beginning. What they wanted next was me. That night, after Brittany and Jason mocked my memory and dismissed me as confused, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the evidence I had gathered. Fear was still there, trembling under my skin, but something else had taken root: resolve. I was tired of being outmaneuvered, tired of letting them treat me like I was already half gone. The next morning, I bought an AirTag. I asked my neighbor, Thomas, sweet kid in his 20s who always helped carry my groceries, to pair it to my phone and show me how the tracking worked. I didn't explain why. He didn't ask. He slid it discreetly into a tiny zipped compartment on the inside of Brittany's handbag while she was dropping off some cookies for Christmas she had clearly bought from the store. I slipped my own wallet into her handbag beforehand, knowing she always carried it whenever she helped me. She left without noticing a thing. Then I waited. The first ping came a few hours later, a location near the bank. The next day, a law office in downtown Sacramento. The third time, a luxury nursing home 20 minutes away, the kind with glossy brochures showing smiling seniors who never look frightened or forgotten. I wrote every address down, date, time, duration. I didn't want assumptions. I wanted proof. By the end of the week, I had enough to know this wasn't coincidence. Brittany wasn't shopping. She wasn't meeting friends. She was preparing something formal, something planned. I called the elder law attorney my neighbor's mother had recommended, a sharp woman named Marlene, with silver hair and the eyes of someone who had spent her life fighting battles for people like me. I arrived at her office clutching my folder of printed statements, tracking logs, handwritten notes, and a weight in my chest too heavy to carry much longer. She listened in perfect silence. Not pitying, not patronizing listening. When I finished, she tapped the stack of bank statements with a polished fingernail. "There is a pattern," she said quietly, "and a large one." "What do I do?" I asked. "We start at the bank." We drove to the branch closest to Brittany's pings. The manager was courteous in the way people are when they fear liability. He pulled my file, glanced at it, then hesitated. "There is a durable power of attorney on file," he said. My stomach dropped. "No," I whispered. "There isn't." He slid the papers across the desk. My name sat at the top, my forged signature at the bottom, and beneath it, the names listed as my attorneys in fact, Jason Groves. Brittany Lawson Groves. My breath caught somewhere between disbelief and horror. The manager cleared his throat. Your daughter-in-law brought this in last month with your son. They said you were having trouble remembering things and wanted to make sure your bills were handled. Marlene leaned forward. Do you have video of the signing? A witness not related to the parties? Anything verifying consent? The manager stiffened. We relied on the signatures and their explanations. They said Mrs. Groves was overwhelmed, that she didn't like coming to the bank anymore. No one called me, I said. My voice cracked only once. Jason's signature was on the witness line. My son had signed as if he watched me willingly hand over every right I had to my life, my home, my medical decisions, my bank accounts, a witness signature, to a crime. My heart felt like it tore open. Marlene took copies of everything. Her tone shifted, no longer gentle. We need to see what they have already done with this document. We drove to the law office, where Brittany's tracker had pinged. They couldn't tell us much privacy laws, but when Marlene mentioned elder exploitation and fraudulent POA, the paralegal slipped. Your daughter-in-law asked about transferring property after establishing legal authority, she murmured before catching herself. I shouldn't say more. Then we checked the nursing home. The admissions coordinator glanced nervously at Brittany's name. Marlene mentioned elder exploitation, and the coordinator visibly stiffened as if she had feared this exact question might one day come. Yes, she came in, the woman said. She asked specifically about our memory care wing and whether she could admit her mother-in-law on short notice if wandering or confusion escalated. I stared at her. Memory care. A locked unit. For people who cannot legally advocate for themselves. My voice was quiet. Did she give you paperwork? Just a copy of the power of attorney. She said she was managing everything. I felt the world tilt. My knees nearly buckled. Marlene steadied me. Mrs. Groves, she said softly. This goes far beyond financial access. They are preparing to institutionalize you. Once you're in a memory unit, even temporarily, they could sell your house, drain your accounts, and no one would question it. The room blurred. I thought of the patients I had cared for during my years as a nurse, elderly, frightened, placed in facilities by children eager to be rid of them. I had promised myself I would never end up like that, and yet my own son was planning it. A sound escaped me, a low, broken sob I hadn't made in decades. I saved him from everything, I whispered. And he wants to erase me. Marlene squeezed my hand. Not anymore. We're stopping this. But stopping the damage was only the beginning now. We needed to make sure they could never touch my life again. She laid out the plan. Immediately revoke the fraudulent POA. Notify the bank formally. Contact Adult Protective Services with the documentation. Establish a trust that Brittany and Jason could never touch, and prepare for the confrontation that would inevitably come. I wiped my eyes and nodded. After a lifetime of patching wounds, this time I would not be the one bleeding. This time, I was going to fight. In my 72 years, I had never acted as quickly as I did after discovering the forged power of attorney. The shock didn't just frighten me, it cleared every illusion I had left about Jason and Brittany. If I waited even one more day, I could lose my savings, my home, and my freedom. So I moved. The morning after visiting the bank and the nursing home, I returned to Marlene's office. She had already prepared the revocation documents. I read every line, then signed my real signature, reclaiming what was mine. Marlene immediately sent notices to the bank, the law firm, and the nursing home, steadying me with her certainty. You're not powerless, Susan, she said. They counted on you believing you were. For the first time in years, I felt something stronger than fear. I felt myself stand upright again. Marlene then walked me through the irrevocable trust Brittany would never see it coming. Once signed, neither she nor Jason could touch my home, my savings, or what remained of my husband's settlement. Everything went to causes that had shown me kindness. A nursing scholarship, my small church, and a neighbor's children. Not Jason, not Brittany, not a cent. I signed without trembling. Marlene updated my will next. Jason would receive only a symbolic amount if he avoided conviction. Brittany's name was removed entirely, blacked out like it had never belonged there at all. When we finished, Marlene folded her hands. You've protected yourself, Susan. They can't take your home, your savings, or your autonomy now. But there was still the matter of accountability. Adult Protective Services came 2 days later. A woman named Valerie and a young man named Dion sat at my dining table and listened without interrupting as I laid out everything: my notes, the AirTag logs, the bank statements, the forged POA, the timestamps, the behavior, the accusations of memory loss, the attempts to push me into a memory care unit. Valerie's lips tightened. "This is classic elder financial abuse," she said. "And the amount involved, $75,000, is well above the threshold for grand theft." "Felony level," Dion added. "Felony." My son and his wife had not just hurt me, they had committed a crime. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something warm bloom in my chest: validation. Someone finally said aloud what I had begun to fear was only in my imagination. "You are not confused," Valerie said firmly. "You are not forgetful. You are not paranoid. You are being exploited." I swallowed hard. I had spent so many years letting other people tell my story for me, Jason, Brittany, even the neighbors whispering about an old woman who lived alone. Hearing professionals affirm my truth felt like being pulled out of deep water. APS took photos, scanned documents, and asked permission to open an investigation. "Yes," I said without hesitation. "Please." When they left, I sat in my silent house and allowed myself one moment to cry, not out of grief, but out of relief. For the first time in many months, I felt protected. Then came the part Brittany would never expect. I went into my bedroom, pulled out the prettiest wrapping paper I owned, gold edges, deep red ribbon, and carefully prepared a box. Inside, I placed the following: a copy of the irrevocable trust with the beneficiaries clearly listed, a formal notice from the bank confirming the POA had been revoked, a printout of the APS case initiation letter stating an active investigation into financial elder abuse, and on top, a small handwritten card: "For the gifts you thought you could take." I closed the lid and tied the ribbon slowly, thinking about the Christmas dinner to come, the one Brittany said she invited me to, only for my gifts. I smiled. For the first time in a long time, the smile felt real. If it was gifts she wanted, then gifts she would get. But not the kind she expected. The truth, wrapped neatly, waiting for the moment she would tear it open with her own greedy hands. And when she did, she would finally understand that I was not the fragile old woman she thought I was. Not anymore. Brittany's manicured fingers dug into the ribbon as if she were unwrapping a luxury brand PR package, not the box I had set neatly on the table. Her little sister angled her phone just right, live streaming the whole moment for her followers, "Unboxing Grandma's Christmas gift," she captioned, giggling like she expected diamonds, keys, or a check with too many zeros. I stood still, my hands resting gently on the back of the chair in front of me. My heart wasn't racing the way I thought it would. It was steady. Very, very steady. Brittany peeled back the lid with a flourish and reached inside. The moment her fingers touched paper instead of velvet or metal, her face dropped like a curtain yanked off stage. "What is this?" she scoffed loudly, turning the papers over as if something expensive might be hiding underneath. "Seriously? Paper?" Her sister zoomed in, still filming. Brittany pulled out the first document, the copy of my irrevocable trust, and held it up, squinting. She skimmed a line, then another. Her brow twitched, then her lips parted. What does this even mean?" she muttered. "Why is my name not on Jason? Look at this." She shoved the trust into his hands with a jittery laugh that fooled no one. Jason scanned the document, and I saw the moment the truth dug its claws into him. His jaw unlocked, his fingers tightened, his throat bobbed. Before he could speak, Brittany grabbed another paper. "What now?" she barked, ripping open the next envelope. Her eyes darted left to right, until they stopped. Her mouth froze, mid-word. Power of attorney revoked. Suspected forgery. Signatures inconsistent. Investigation pending. What? The pitch of her voice jumped half an octave. What is this, Susan? She slammed the page onto the table hard enough to rattle the silverware. A few guests flinched. Her sister kept recording until a cousin elbowed her to stop. But it was too late. The video had already been sent to their private family group chat. I recognized the sound of notifications pinging around the table. Brittany dove into the box again like a raccoon in a panic. She pulled out the APS letter, and when she read the first sentence aloud, her voice cracked. We are formally opening an investigation into alleged elder financial abuse. Silence fell so sharply that even the Christmas music playing from the kitchen felt like an intrusion. I watched faces shift from amused to horrified, from smug to stunned. It was as if the entire room collectively realized they weren't witnessing a cute family moment, they were witnessing a crime scene unravel in real time. A woman on Brittany's side blinked hard. Elder abuse? Grand theft? What? Another whispered to her husband. Did they steal from her? Brittany's face reddened from her neck upward, blotchy and furious. She crushed the letter in her fist and hurled it onto the table. Humiliation lit her skin in blotches, and panic pushed her past the point of restraint. You crazy old witch, she screamed. You're accusing us of theft? We used that money for the family, for this house, for our future. Her words, her choice of words, hung in the air like spilled poison. She had just admitted everything. Jason looked like he'd swallowed a stone. He reached for her arm. Britt, stop. Seriously. Just calm. No, she snapped, shaking him off. She set us up. She's insane. She can't remember anything. She loses her keys twice a week, and now she's filing reports like she's some FBI agent? I lifted my chin slightly. I remember the $75,000 that disappeared, I said evenly. I remember the forged signature. I remember the bank manager telling me you brought the papers in on my behalf. And I remember the nursing home consultation you attended without me. Her face contorted. You tracked me? Are you stalking me now? I put an AirTag in my own wallet, I replied. The wallet you kept taking to help me. The AirTag went where the wallet went. Several guests gasped. One muttered, "Oh my God." Jason ran a shaky hand through his hair. Mom, you're twisting everything. We were trying to help you. You've been forgetful. You get confused. Brittany cut him off immediately. Don't you dare act innocent. You told me to do it. You said, she'll never know. She's old. She doesn't even read her statements. The room exploded into murmurs. Jason stared at her as if she had stabbed him between the ribs. Why would you say that out loud? Oh, now you're worried about optics? She yelled. Maybe you should have thought about that before you signed as the witness on the fake POA, genius. Gasps. Real gasps this time. Someone dropped a fork. Jason's mother-in-law covered her mouth. Brittany's father stood up abruptly. Did you two really forge a signature? Did you really take her money? Brittany's voice screeched. It was for use, for the family. She doesn't need that money. She'll be dead in 10 years, her mother whispered, horrified. Brittany, stop talking. Brittany pushed past her. No, everyone's acting like she's the victim here when she's just selfish. Sitting on money she doesn't even use. Living in that depressing little apartment smelling like iodine and old books. A man across the table muttered, Jesus Christ, she really said that? I inhaled slowly, letting the moment settle. Then I reached into my purse and pulled out the final sheet, the APS intake summary. I placed it gently on the table beside the mashed potatoes and the spilled wine. Since you're already looking at documents, I said softly, you might as well see this too, Jason whispered. Oh, God. I tapped the page once. This is the report that lists both of you, by name, as the individuals who benefited from the unauthorized transactions. It also notes the attempted use of a forged power of attorney and the steps taken to place me into a memory care facility without my consent. No yelling. No trembling. My voice was steady as stone. If APS believes no crime occurred, I continued, they will close the case. But if they do believe a crime occurred, I paused, then this house will not be the first place they visit. You both know that. Brittany's father sat back heavily in his chair. I cannot believe this. Brittany slammed both palms on the table. You think you're so clever? You think this little stunt is going to scare us? I'll sue you. I met her eyes with the calm of a woman who has nothing left to lose. You cannot sue someone for protecting herself with the law, I said. You cannot sue someone for filing truthful reports. And you cannot sue someone whose documents were filed with APS, the Bank Fraud Department, and my attorney before I placed them in your hands. I leaned forward slightly. But you can hire an attorney for yourself. You may need one. The entire table had gone silent. Forks frozen midair, wine glasses untouched. Even the children had stopped moving, sensing something seismic had occurred. Jason looked as if a lifetime of denial was collapsing inside his ribcage. Brittany shook with rage, her chest rising and falling like a cornered animal's. I straightened my coat, smoothing the collar with a grace I didn't know I still possessed. You said you invited me only for the gifts, I reminded her gently. I gestured toward the box. And tonight, I gave you exactly what you asked for. The truth. Wrapped in ribbon, placed right in your hands. I picked up my purse, slipped my arm into my coat sleeve, and lifted my chin toward the front door. Thank you for dinner, I said quietly. Merry Christmas. No one moved, no one spoke. I walked out with my head high, past the glowing tree, past the stunned faces, past the house that had once belonged to a version of my son who no longer existed. The cold California night air hit my face like clean water. Behind me, through the walls, I could hear Brittany screaming again, rage, panic, denial, while Jason tried to calm her and their families argued. But none of it belonged to me anymore. I stepped off their porch with steady feet. For the first time in decades, I was finally walking toward a life where I was not the victim. I was the witness. I was the truth teller. I was free. And Christmas had never felt so peaceful. I didn't attend the APS interviews. I didn't have to. My part was done, and everything unfolded exactly as the investigator predicted. APS contacted Jason and Brittany first. The initial call alone rattled their perfect California image. Within a week, each sat before a financial crimes officer, and later I was told carefully that neither appeared credible. Their stories clashed with each other and with the evidence. $75,000 isn't petty theft in California, it's felony grand theft, worsened by a forged POA and attempts to place me in memory care. Whispers spread quickly. Jason was put on leave, then suspended, then fired. I knew it before he did. A former coworker of his, who attended the same church as my neighbor, spread the news quickly. Our company can't have an employee under investigation for elder financial abuse. Reputation was everything in his industry. So were audits, ethics certifications, compliance checks. Jason's desk was cleared by security within the hour. Brittany fared no better. The bank flagged her accounts and placed internal warnings on multiple transactions. She had attempted to apply for a personal loan, maybe to hire a lawyer, only to be denied for being high risk. Word filtered through her family that 2 of her aunts removed her from their babysitting rotations. Another refused to co-sign anything for her again. Someone even texted my neighbor, "We had no idea she'd actually steal from an old woman." Old woman. Funny how that word suddenly became an accusation instead of a punchline. Their home, the one they decorated like a magazine spread, became a battleground. Neighbors heard the yelling accusations back and forth, voices rising with the desperation of 2 people who finally realized they were not partners in ambition, but accomplices in wrongdoing. "If you were not such a coward," Brittany screamed one night, loud enough for someone to hear through the yard, "you would have earned more and we would never have needed her money." You forged the signature, Jason roared back. You did the nursing home stuff. You took her wallet, not me. You said she was going senile. You said she'd never notice. Back and forth, each sentence peeling away another layer of the image they had built for themselves. Their marriage cracked the way things do when the glue holding them together wasn't love but entitlement. Meanwhile, my life grew quieter, peaceful, even. I returned to my little house. I started attending the support group for older women facing financial abuse. Sitting in that circle of soft voices and shaking hands, I learned I was far from alone. Too many of us had given our lives to children who grew up believing love was something they deserved, not something they owed back. My days were simple: church on Sundays, tea with neighbors, long walks when my knees allowed it. I breathed fully again. I slept without fear. And for the first time in many years, I felt safe inside my own skin. Then, one gray afternoon, Jason showed up at my door. I knew it was him by the hesitant knock 3 taps, then a long pause, as if he were unsure whether he wanted me to answer. When I opened the door, the boy I raised was gone. In his place stood a man with unshaven cheeks, hollow eyes, and clothes that looked slept in. He had lost weight, and something in his posture sagged, as if the consequences now hung directly from his spine. "Mom," he whispered. I stepped aside without speaking, allowing him into the living room. He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, hands clasped tightly as if they were holding his world together. He didn't look at me when he began. "Did you have to do it?" His voice cracked. "Did you have to go that far? APS? The bank? You destroyed my life. You ruined everything." I felt the familiar ache, a mother's ache, but it did not unsteady me anymore. "I did not ruin your life, Jason," I said calmly. "You and your wife did that yourselves. I only removed the curtain so everyone could see what was happening behind it." He flinched like I had slapped him. "Mom, please. We were just trying to build something. I grew up poor. I was humiliated for it. I didn't want to feel that way again. I didn't want my kids to feel that way. I just wanted one chance to get ahead." "And your solution," I replied, "was to hollow me out like a bank vault and toss me into a nursing home so you wouldn't have to look me in the eyes while you spent my money." He shook his head violently. "It wasn't like that. It was exactly like that." He covered his face with both hands, shoulders trembling. "I lost my job. Brittany's leaving. APS is talking about charges. Mom, just say it was a misunderstanding. Say you got confused. They will drop everything." My heart cracked but not open, just apart. "No, Jason," I said gently. "I will not lie to protect you. I won't add a single word to harm you, but I will not erase the truth. You must face the consequences of what you did." He looked up, tears streaking down his cheeks. He gestured vaguely toward the world that had turned against him. APS, his employer, even Brittany's own family. "You're choosing them over your own son. I am choosing myself," I said softly, "for the first time in my life." He stared at me, wounded and furious and lost all at once. Then he stood abruptly, swaying slightly. "I don't know how to come back from this," he whispered. "That is your journey," I replied. "Not mine." Jason walked to the door, paused, then looked over his shoulder. "Do you still love me?" he asked, voice breaking like a child's. I swallowed hard. "Yes," I whispered, "but I will not let that love be the rope you use to pull me down again." He left without another word. I watched from the doorway as he walked down the driveway, shoulders hunched, steps unsteady, a man finally colliding with the truth he had spent years running from. And as the wind rustled the leaves outside, I realized something. I still loved my son, but I loved myself too, and I had finally learned how to choose the right one when it mattered. My kitchen has always been small, but in my old age it has become a kind of sanctuary. The morning light slips through the blinds in soft gold lines, warming the floor, touching the edges of everything I have left in this world. I sit in my wooden chair, the same chair I've kept for nearly 30 years, a little wobbly but steady where it matters. Strong enough to hold me. Stronger than most people turned out to be. On the table rests a cup of hot tea, steam rising gently, and beside it the photograph of my late husband, Thomas Groves, smiling with that soft kindness he carried everywhere. Next to the frame lies a neatly folded envelope containing the updated trust and the will documents that no longer feel like burdens, but like shields I finally learned how to raise. I run my fingers along the rim of the teacup and think about the Christmas dinner, about Brittany, leaning back in her designer chair, wine swirling in her glass, looking me straight in the eyes with her perfect smile and saying, "We only invited you for the gifts." For months, those words echoed inside my chest like a bruise that refused to fade. Now, strangely, they bring me peace, because she was right. I did bring a gift, just not the kind she expected. I take a slow breath, feeling the warmth of the room settle into my bones. They had wanted money, submission, silence. They wanted me to play the part of the grateful old woman who hands out presents and asks for nothing in return, who quietly fades into the background once her usefulness expires. But that Christmas, I gave them something different, something sharp enough to cut their lies open, something solid enough to protect what little I have left. I gave them the truth. And I kept the only gift that ever truly belonged to me, my life, unsteered by their hands. Sometimes, when the afternoons are long and the house is too quiet, Jason brings my little granddaughter, just 4 years old, full of questions and sticky fingers. He never stays long. Guilt clings to him like smoke. But he brings her because he knows she deserves better, and because he understands now that keeping me from her would be another cruelty he could not live with. I never say a word about what happened. I offer her cookies, tell her stories about birds and gardens, and the silly way her grandfather used to trip over his own feet. She laughs as if she's scattering pieces of sunshine across the room. And when she hugs me, she hugs with her whole little body, pure and unguarded. I do not speak badly about her parents. Children deserve to grow without inheriting the bitterness of adults. But in small ways, gentle ways, I teach her the truth. I wish someone had taught Jason long ago. Love doesn't mean taking. I tell her while she stacks wooden blocks. Love means taking care. When she leaves, the house feels bigger than it should, but the ache is softer than it once was. One evening, after she and Jason drove away, I sat at this very table and wrote a letter. Not to him, not to Brittany, not even to my granddaughter. I wrote it to myself. To Susan Groves, from Susan Groves, I wrote at the top. Then I let my hand move without stopping. You spent your entire life believing your worth was measured by what you could give. It took 72 years to learn that the greatest gift you ever offered was the day you finally refused to let anyone take anything more. When I finished writing, I folded the letter and tucked it into the envelope with the trust papers, letting it rest there like a small testament to the woman I finally allowed myself to become. I glance over at my wooden chair, the seat no one else ever thinks much about. Once, I believed people had the power to decide where I belonged, in the back, in the quiet, out of the picture. But now I understand something my younger self never could have imagined. This chair is my front row. Not to a wedding, not to a holiday dinner, but to my own story. And the older I get, the more precious that feels. I lift my tea, inhale the steam, and smile to myself. My daughter-in-law said they only invited me for the gifts. I murmur softly. A small laugh escapes me, not bitter, not triumphant, just honest. In the end, the only gift they got from me was the truth, and the one I kept was the rest of my life. The sun dips lower, brushing the kitchen in gentle amber. I sit a little straighter in my chair, feeling its steady support beneath me. I am no longer in the back row of anything, not anymore. I have pulled up my own seat quietly, firmly to the front of my life, and even if no one applauds, I know I finally chose the right place to sit. If you've stayed with me until this very moment, sweetheart, then thank you. Stories like mine aren't always easy to hear because they peel back the truth behind family, aging, and the price some people are willing to make others pay. But if my voice reached you, if something in my journey reminded you of your own grandmother, your mother, or even a part of yourself you thought had gone quiet, then I'm grateful you're here. There comes a time in a woman's life when she stops sitting where others place her and chooses her own seat instead. If this story helped you feel that strength even a little, then darling, don't leave just yet. Go ahead and tap that subscribe button for Grandma True Stories. Your support keeps these stories alive, stories of women who fought silently, loved fiercely, endured more than anyone knew, and finally stepped into the front row of their own lives. Thank you for listening, sweetheart. Come back soon. I still have so many truths left to tell.